If you're a high-achieving woman who's exhausted by stress, stuck in constant conflict, and tired of being overlooked in the exact rooms where you know you were born to lead, then this podcast is for you. So here's your host, Pallavi Jain.
Have you ever noticed how high-achieving women can be brilliant at leading, achieving, and holding it all together, yet still feel isolated, stretched thin, or quietly exhausted? We're surrounded by people, messages, and noise, yet many of us feel deeply alone. Welcome, everyone. I'm Pallavi, your host, and today's conversation is about connection, not as a buzzword, not as networking, but as a biological need, a leadership skill, and a powerful antidote to burnout. We're talking about community, asking for support, and why leaning into your people isn't optional. It's essential for resilience, fulfillment, and impact. And that brings me to today's guest, someone I deeply admire and respect. Cara Truitt is the founder and executive producer of TEDx Sugar Creek Women, a coach, connector, and community builder with over 2 decades of experience as an entrepreneur and leader in Charlotte, North Carolina. Named one of the top 50 women to know in North Carolina in 2024, Cara is also the Charlotte chapter host of Mic Drop Club and education director of NABOok Charlotte. She is deeply passionate about amplifying women's ideas and creating spaces where meaningful conversations and communities can thrive. Welcome to her Boss Brain, Cara.
Thank you so much for having me, Pallavi. It's really an honor to be here.
Of course, I was so looking forward to this conversation. And we're at that cusp of the new year starting. So 2026 is almost here. So how are you feeling right now? Let's start with that.
Oh, wow. It's, as I say, all the emojis, right? There's so much going on in December, but I really try deeply to lean into the season of winter and
Yes.
really find some time to take out and connect with myself, with really celebrating. To me, December is really a time to celebrate the wins. And sometimes it's so easy for us to get swept up in where we're going into 2026, what we want to achieve next year, that
Yeah.
we forget to take a moment and stop and look at how much we've grown, how much we've actually come in this year. And I always try to take a moment and look around and say, what is it that I have right now that is something I dreamed of having? And sometimes
That's
we let those what feel like small dreams now because we've already achieved them and we're on to the next thing. And as someone that has a growth mindset and loves to hang around with people that are big thinkers and have big dreams, it's easy for me to get caught up in that. So I always have to take a moment. And you know what helps me to do that is really my children. So I
yeah.
love just the fact that this is the last week of their school before winter break, and we get a chance to really block off the calendar and make time to connect with them and just really celebrate all of the growth that we've all had this year. So that's the space that I'm in right now. And it's been a
Yeah.
big year for me.
Yeah, I love that. And since you mentioned reflection in 2025, and I know you have done so many things this year, but what's one thing, if you want to just speak out here, that you're most grateful for?
I am most grateful for the opportunity that's really presented itself this year to step into a leadership role with TEDx in that I'm able to help other women to use their
Yes.
voice.
Yeah.
That is something that's really important to me. It's the journey that I had to go on, and it was a lifelong journey for me of learning how to really stand in my own truth and trust myself and use my voice. And that to me is what TEDx Sugar Creek Women represents. It's women that are coming up with their ideas and standing on a stage and saying, this is the idea that I have to share with the world, and this matters. And
Yes.
that opportunity is the volunteer work, and it's absolutely priceless because I get to help women go from, I wonder if my idea matters enough to share
Yes.
it, millions of views online, and them saying, yes, it does matter.
That is beautiful and so nicely said. And now, since we are going to talk about your superpower, connected and community, before we go deeper, I want to pause and clarify something for our listeners today because I feel connection is often misunderstood. When we talk about connection and community, we're not talking about being superficially friendly, collecting LinkedIn contacts, or scrolling through social media hoping it will replace real connection. That kind of overconsumption may keep us busy, but it doesn't nourish us. Real connection is intentional. It's reciprocal, right? It's being willing to be seen, to ask for help, and to offer support in return. It's about building a tribe where you don't have to perform, where you can be human. And that's the best thing I like about you. How when we connected, I think of it like this root system in a forest. You don't see it on the surface, but those roots are what holds everything steady when the storms come. And that's what real community does. It holds you up even when you don't realize you need it yet. And for you, Cara, I've had a front row seat to your leadership through TEDx Sugar Creek Women. I still remember your first year, you reached out because you wanted your speakers and team to feel supported, grounded, and fully resourced. We did our Lead from Within workshop together for your speakers and team. And then a year later, oh my God, you hit over 1 million views. Now, first of all, congratulations. That doesn't happen by accident. Can you share the story behind building such an intentional and connected community?
Yes, absolutely. We absolutely loved our workshop with you, first of all. That was really a wonderful way to bring together all of our volunteers, our speakers, our coaches. And the reason that we did that is because we wanted them to know that no matter what contribution they were making to this community and to building this foundation, every single contribution mattered, whether that meant they were checking in people at the front door, or they were helping people with their tickets online, or if they were writing the talk or performing the talk or coaching the speakers. Every single contribution made this whole thing happen. And I take very little credit for those 1 million views. To me, that is really all about building that foundation. I can take credit for bringing the people together and creating a space where they can thrive, and then really giving them the support that they need to go out and market their talks and share them with their friends and share them with the world. And yes, it is a space where they've been able to take off into impacting millions of people. But you know what I love about that is when I remember the first time that I brought my speakers together in a circle and said, okay, here's what we're doing. Let's really ground into this moment. I said, we are going to give this talk for 3 people, and I call it Speak to the 3.
Okay.
So Speak to the 3 was someone's going to hear this talk that is going to change their life because they heard your idea. That's big. If you have one person that changes their life based on your talk, is it worth giving? And if the answer is yes, then you're ready to give that talk. And then somebody might hear it and actually start a movement in their community. They might be someone like me that's, you know what, I'm going to start a whole movement. I'm going to host a whole TEDx and get lots of other people out there to share their ideas. Or maybe they take your idea and they implement it in their city.
Right.
And then there's another person that's going to hear it that is simply going to be inspired to tell their own story, to share their own idea. Those are the 3 people that you're speaking to. And so if you can get up there and you can speak to those 3 people, you don't know if they're going to be sitting in the room or if they're going to watch it in a year from now in Brazil or Germany. But if you can just speak to those 3 people, it's going to matter. What you're doing is going to make a difference. And maybe, just maybe, you'll reach millions more. And that is what's happening. But
My
that's
goodness,
why,
that's
because it's all about the connection and the intention behind the message. They have to speak to connect. They have to speak with intention. And that's really what it's all about when you're building community too. It's the thing people get wrong about connection is it doesn't start with connecting with other people. It actually starts with connecting with ourselves. And that's also where Lead from Within comes in. And that's why I was like, you're the person to come in and have this conversation with these speakers so that they can see that what they're really doing is leading from within. And then that's translating to them on stage.
That is so beautiful. I love your Speak to the 3 because I have to tell you, there are so many people who have reached out to me after I did my TED Talk and they were like, oh, they got inspired and they wanted to be on those stages. And I'm going to say it to them that
Please.
this is Cara's formula, that she inspires these speakers who have done such an amazing, phenomenal job, Cara, with the speaker lineup you had, your first event, such a grand success. I just have so much respect for you. And I know we have had so many conversations. I know how much hard work and intention you have put foot, running through. We have had several conversations when Cara was in the car, and those were the only minutes she could spare, but she was always there, ready to connect, ready to make things happen. And really, that's what community is about. That's what real connection is about. And that's why you were the perfect person to talk about this topic, honestly. And I know you've mentioned certain aha moments for you as well for the workshop, but that's why this work really is about helping women change how they relate to themselves and to each other. So connection becomes something they live, not something they're constantly chasing. And I think you naturally do that in your work. Now, I also know, and we have had several conversations, so pick the story you want to share here, but I know the Cara we see today, this deep commitment to connection and community. Where did that come from? And what experiences shaped how you lead and show up now?
I grew up in a really close-knit community, and there was a time in my life where I lost that connection, went through a divorce and filed for bankruptcy. It was coming out of an abusive marriage. My sister passed away, all in the course of 1 week. And if you've ever left, anyone that's ever left an abusive situation knows that sometimes that means you're separating from a lot of things. And so what I found was really just a dark time in my life where I went into what I call the work of not feeling and just got really busy with working and just let myself isolate outside of anything that I had to do for work, and just was really feeling very disconnected for a few years of my life because there was so much change and so much loss all at one time. And I thought that I was fine. And, that word is very dangerous,
Yes.
until I landed myself in a community here in Charlotte. And I guess I was seeking something more in terms of community, but I didn't realize just how much that I had missed it until I found it again. Just how much that I had missed really being in a place where I was feeling fully supported from all sides. And this was the first time I really found what I felt was an inclusive community where I could come as I was and just be myself. And it was called Be Yoga. And so I started attending this community. I actually started working there. It became my second home. Eventually, I became their business manager, their director of operations. I ran multiple locations in the city in Charlotte. And then when the owners decided to leave, they sold the business to me. And so I bought the business that saved my life. It was 6 months before the pandemic. So I immediately went from being a new studio owner, and I was a new mom, I had a toddler at home, to
Oh my goodness.
how do we, I had so much motivation to keep this community together.
Yeah.
I was like, I was watching studios and communities just close overnight,
Yeah.
dropping like flies around me. And I think 8 studios closed in a matter of 2 weeks. But what people maybe understand, maybe don't understand, is some of these spaces, these are lifelines.
Mm.
These are places where people really can take care of their mental health. And that is so important. And so for me, I knew how much of a lifeline that community was for me. And I wasn't about to let it just fall completely apart in the pandemic when we needed it the most. So we shifted, we moved to an online model, but we started having classes outdoors and online all around the city and creating what I call a yoga hug around the city, really just tapping into the power of connection. And when you're actually physically separated,
Yeah.
it takes a lot more work to realize how deeply you have to connect with yourself and find new ways to connect with other people. And now that's really changed. The pandemic has changed the way we connect. And so there's a danger too of when we go into these hybrid situations and these online situations, how do we create meaningful connections even when we're physically separated, even when we're connecting maybe digitally? And also, are we finding those times to connect in person? Because we still need both. We can't just let it become only digital connection. And so that really became a balance that I had to learn how to play with and how to lead from. And so that's where my community building self, I will say, really stepped up. And that was really during the pandemic. And that evolved over time. It led into retreats, and then it led into really more of a speaking business where I go into other spaces and help other people create communities and help other people build community with their own businesses and their teams. And then it evolved again into creating this new community of TEDx Sugar Creek Women here in Charlotte. And so I think that answered your question. It's a very personal thing for me to know that community really saved my life when I was in a very depressed state. And so I know how important it is for people to have that in their lives in one way or another.
That is just so powerful. Thank you, first of all, for sharing your personal story with all of us. But it really is powerful. And I know that it also reminds me that how one small thing, one small connection leads to a ripple effect of you becoming an owner of that place, right? It's a small, so you can never envision what one small act, intentional act can lead to, and one small connection can lead to. It also reminds me that it's really like often describes connection as strands in a web. Like each thread holds tension, supports the whole, and that strengthens the structure. Because I see that in the workshops that I do too. And one specific women leader is coming to mind who was trying to literally do everything herself. She was carrying her team's challenges, decisions, expectations. And you could see it in her posture, her energy, her breath. And as we work through the session, gaining inner clarity, practicing asking for help, leaning into each other, and building collaboration, something shifted for her. And that's what struck with me was this: what one person lets others in, it's it just doesn't help her. It strengthens the entire web. And I think that's what happened with you. You started it with your personal experience, and then now you are helping others build those communities and building those webs for them so they don't feel the way you did. Now, we're talking about women, and this is such an important conversation for them because high achieving women, especially, are often taught to be strong, capable, self sufficient, and sometimes at the cost of connection. And then they hesitate to ask for help to build their tribe. So, why is building your tribe and asking for help sometimes and investing in others so critical, specifically for women leaders?
Yeah, it's for generations and generations, women especially, but people in general supported each other in a village, in a literal village where we're coming together in circle on a daily basis, supporting one another. And we are the most connected society. We have the most potential for connection, but as we have grown with every new wireless device, we're feeling less actually deeply connected. And so not to say that we need to move into villages again, but we need to create that sort of village in our lives. And that doesn't mean it has to be a lot of people. I think it's really important. Sometimes people see someone like me that has hundreds of people around them and thinks they have a huge inner circle. So no, you can't. You can only really deeply connect with so many people, and you can show up in different ways in different spaces. But I do think that it's important, if nothing else, that you have a couple of people in your life that you can have as your circle. And sometimes that takes work to find that. It doesn't always come easily. There's a speaker that I love, Shasta Nelson, who talks about using this as really a fitness test. So you have to actually, like, as if you were working out, you have to
Yeah.
work a muscle. So
Yep.
connection can be a muscle that you have to work. And sometimes it's uncomfortable when you're working
Yes.
that and building that muscle and you have to wait. But I always say that the thing that I do is I seek out a space. And when I enter that space, I am listening to my body and I'm listening to whether everything in my body is telling me to stay. And if everything is feeling aligned, sometimes I might not even understand why yet, but this feels, yes, this is a space that I want to stay in, at least for now. That is an indicator that maybe there's something there for you. There's no shortages of meetup groups. And that's the great thing about post-pandemic. I think that people were so eager for in person again that we have more now, I think, almost than we ever did in terms of opportunities for connection in person and also online. But it's really a matter of don't feel like you have to be in every single group, but try one.
Yeah.
See if that circle feels like one that you want to be in. And if you don't see one that you like, maybe consider building your own. Find something that you're interested in. And it's important to have those people, even if it's small, even if it's brief,
Yeah.
those touch points in your lives. And especially as we're leading, there are so many people that are asking things of us that you need to have people, or at least a person that you can have in your life that you can go to for community that's just for you, just to support you in community. That's really important. And it's part of the essential elements like water, sleep,
Yes.
breathing, food. We have to have connection. It's truly essentials for our health as well as our just general well-being and enjoyment of life.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And what you said, I mean, science backs it. If you look at it right now, nearly 50% of women report feeling alone or left out, even when leading teams and managing full lives. And loneliness isn't just emotional. It affects our nervous system. It increases stress hormones, like Kara said, and dims our brain's reward pathways. So our inner technology reads disconnection as danger. But when you connect, it changes everything. Women with strong social support experience, lower stress, better health, greater resilience, right? Like Kara said, even small moments, a genuine check in, a kind word, 10 minutes of meaningful conversation can trigger oxytocin and calm the nervous system. Now, I read this somewhere that connection is like sunlight breaking through clouds. So one small beam can recalibrate your energy and remind you that you don't have to carry this alone. And how beautiful is that once you realize? Because I think a lot of us just feel, oh, we have to just figure it all out, and we don't want to show that we don't have it all under control. Now, from your experience, what's the most misleading idea about connection? And what have you seen actually work when it comes to building real community?
The most misunderstood part about connection, I think, is that we think we don't have time for it.
Yeah, I
Because
agree.
we're so busy, because we have so much going on, especially as high achievers, it's not that we don't know we need connection.
Yeah,
Everyone read the US Surgeon General's report a couple of years ago saying how dangerous loneliness is to our health, worse than
yep,
smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Okay, we
yep.
know this. We understand that this is something we need. But we just think, I don't have time and I have to wait for connection, especially self connection, until later. So I believe that self connection is actually the key to connecting with other people. Again, similar with your framework from lead from within. It has to start within us. It has to start with our own practices of how we connect with ourselves and how we set intentions about how we want to connect with other people. Between every opportunity to connect is a door. And how we choose to walk through that door makes all the difference. We can walk in distracted and disengaged, talk to hundreds of people, and not make any real connection. Or we can walk in with intention and have a couple really meaningful conversations and feel completely filled up. And so it's really about, can we take micro moments of self connection before we connect with other people, whether that's before we hop on a Zoom call, before we go into a meeting, before we pick up our kids from school. This is the framework that I use called Stop to Connect. And so you stop to connect with yourself, set a silent intention, lean into your self trust that you can meet the moment, whatever that is, be open and curious to connection, really inclusively with other people, and prepare to be present. So that's what the STOP stands for, STOP.
I
And
love that.
so preparing to be present, because when you make another person feel seen and heard, even if it's just for a couple of moments, they're going to remember you. And that's going to build a deeper connection than an hour-long conversation where you're also on your phone or you're distracted. So that's my thing. It's really about not that we don't have time for it, it's that we have to be willing to take a micro moment to connect with ourselves before we connect with other people. And all those connections that we're already making every single day become more meaningful and they lead to more success. They lead to more collaborations and more aligned partnerships and deeper relationships with our families.
This is so beautiful and so powerful. I'm just like soaking it all in what as you were talking about it, because one, you're spot on by saying we often say we don't have time for it and we put it on the back burner. So no, if you're being intentional about it, you can always find time. And the second, when you were talking about it, it actually reminded me when you were talking about the self connection. So 15, 20 years ago, that was probably me, where I would be so scared to go to a networking event or talk to people because I think that self connection part was so missing. And I was so out of my head where I was nervous, I was anxious. What are people going to think about me? How do I need to, how I'm perceived? All that self talk would ruminate because I was just not present and I was not anchored in connected with my own self. What is it that matters to me? why do I want to have this connection? What do I want to get from this? Or what can I give back? And I think when you really center yourself, and that's what the magic happened for me, right? My own transition. I was an HR leader. I was going to all these conferences, but I barely made any real connections at that time because I was all in my head. So that really resonates with me, and that has been my lived experience. And I have seen how I have shifted that just by creating that inner clarity, what you're talking about. So that, thank you, that really resonates. Now, I can just keep talking to you. You have so many golden nuggets, Cara, that you have shared with us. But before we wrap up, I want to create space for our listeners to connect with you beyond this conversation because you have just a natural hack for how you make meaningful connections and how you're bringing communities and people together and helping them. For someone who's listening and feeling inspired by your work around community, if you're looking for a TEDx opportunity and amplifying women's voices and so many other things that Cara does, what's the best way for all these people to reach out to you to bring your work into their lives? And can you talk to them a little bit about what you do?
Absolutely. And thank you for that. So, first of all, they can connect with me on my website. It's myname.com, caratruitt.com. And if they're interested in learning more about TEDx Sugar Creek Women, they can go to tedxsugarcreekwomen.com. So those are the two spaces to connect with me on both fronts. But I'll tell you a little bit more. Most people are familiar with TEDx and what that is. We have an annual event. It's coming up on March 28th in Charlotte, North Carolina. Would love to invite anyone to join us. And you can visit the website and learn all about the speakers and all about the event. But as far as my work, you can connect with me on my website. And I work with people in a few different ways. One, they can bring me in to have a conversation with their teams, their companies, either in a keynote speech fashion or a workshop. And we have a couple of opportunities to talk about connection, building aligned partnerships, and then also the public speaking side. And how do we take that connection and bring it into our communications?
Yes.
And so that lends to a little bit what you were talking about is what do we say when we go in the room,
Yes.
right? So we have to think about how do we take that intentional connection and translate that into our speaking, because newsflash, everyone is a public speaker. So we're all communicating with our teams, our clients. And so how do we do that in a way that builds meaningful connection? So we have keynotes available, workshops available for that. There's also some consulting opportunities there if they want a deeper conversation about how can we build a culture of connection within our company. And then, of course, I also do private and small group coaching around TEDx as well. So if they're interested and they're a thought leader and want to get on the TEDx stage, they can come and talk to me about just how we can navigate that and help them through that application process. So those are both opportunities, and I love to connect with people. They can find me on LinkedIn, and it's Cara Truitt on LinkedIn and Instagram and all the places. So I was lucky to grab my own name early in the days of web domains. So you can find me if you just search for my first and last name.
That's awesome. We'll have all of your information, links, programs in the show notes as well, because community starts with access and Cara truly walks the talk. Now, let's close this for our listeners. From me, here's my key message that I get from our conversation. And Cara, please jump in if you want to add anything. But connection and community aren't soft skills. They are survival and thriving skills, like Cara mentioned. They are how we regulate, how we grow, and how we lead sustainably. So when we lean within and then lean into each other, something powerful happens. It truly does. And I really want to say that if this episode resonated with you, take one intentional step today. Reach out to someone, ask for support. Maybe in your next meeting, check in with yourself and be intentional on how you're showing up, right? Or simply check in with an old friend. And if you're listening and realizing you want to build this kind of connection and inner anchoring, not just in your life, but in how you lead and show up at work, I have created spaces for that. Cara has amazing opportunities. For my work, you can explore my Lead from Within work for organizations or the Rewired Women program that's actually coming up next year, which is an intentional space specially curated for women who are ready to move from stress into connection, clarity, and sustainable leadership, grounded in inner science and power of community. Now, all those details are in the show notes. Of course, no pressure anywhere. These are just invitation. Pick what works for you and what resonates with you. As we close, I want to thank you, Cara, again for being here with us. I know you're super swamped with so many things that you're doing right now. And thank you so much for showing up so intentionally and sharing such beautiful nuggets with us. And I just want to say to our listeners that remember, that's how your boss brain leads. Not alone, not on empty, but connected, grounded, and supported from within. We will see you next time. Until then, you keep rocking and be you. Thank you, Cara.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
So that's it for today's episode of her Boss Brain podcast. Head on over to Apple Podcasts, iTunes, or wherever you listen and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week that posts a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes will win a chance in a grand prize drawing to win a $25,000 private VIP day with Pallavi herself. Be sure to head on over to her bossbrainpodcast.com and pick up a free copy of Pallavi's gift and join us next time.